Doing a little cardio. Something in the news that was kind of interesting. Joe Rogan, right? He probably like the biggest podcaster that reaches, I don't know, like millions of people, right? And he recently came on this podcast and explained the whole him and Trump interview and him and Kamala, which they didn't have an interview. So her team was blaming everything on him, that he denied her, and he was at fault, and he'll explain what really happened. And if you watch Joe Rogan, any of his interviews and stuff, he just goes straight like 2-3 hours of the interview, uncut, and for the most part it's uncut, I think, but just straight through, just talking to somebody, man. He seems pretty genuine. You say otherwise, let me know. Like I don't see it. You know what I'm saying? He just seems pretty normal. But here's the clip of him explaining what happened. Get some cardio.
Chris, there was a thing that came out recently. There was a book. There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show, and they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her and what happened with her coming on the show. I don't know if it's 150. A lot of people. They didn't talk to us, and which is kind of crazy, and which is like they didn't even ask. But they said things that just weren't true. One of the things they said that weren't true was that we lied about the day that Trump was coming on. No, we just didn't tell you that Trump was coming on. He was already booked a long time ago. This is how it worked. Trump was really easy to book, like super easy. We offered one day. He said yes. That was it. There was no, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be edited? There was nothing. Yeah. What's the waiver? Here, give me that waiver. Sign it. It was so easy. So he was already booked. They never committed to doing the show. So all this talk, there was another thing they said that the reason why they did the Beyonce thing, the Beyonce event in Houston, was so that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true. They never agreed.
That's fucked.
They also said that they sent someone down here to the studio to do a walkthrough of the set. That's not true. The Trump administration did. I mean, if they are trying to say that they, as in the entire federal government, well, I don't think the Trump, well, I guess the Secret Service is a part of the federal government. Maybe you can kind of get away with saying that because the Secret Service came down here for Trump and looked around, that we sent someone down, but it was not. It was the Trump administration sent them down because they're the only ones that had a date to do the show. These people didn't have a date to do, they never agreed to do the show. This is really important. Even after Trump went on, they offered for me to come to D.C. and do a show with Kamala. But even then, it was the same deal. It was only like 45 minutes to an hour. And, it was not on my set. And I said that, look, he did it here. We should probably do it here. Like, if it's possible to do it here. Obviously, when he did it, it had an enormous result. I'm willing to do the same thing for her. I wanted to release both of them on the same day. This was my goal. I was even trying to figure out if there was a way that I could do it, and I even offered to do it late that night. So the night that Trump came on, I'm like, what if we do her, like when she's done in Texas, if she came here? But no one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it. Well, we went through, I've got a whole, we have all the receipts, by the way.
Of course.
I have a whole list of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we fucked her over and then we fucked her over for Trump, incorrect. Just not true.
And
but I think it's someone trying to cover their ass for the fact that she never did it, and if she did do it, it might have had a positive effect.
Yeah.
If her and I had a good time and we got along great.
All right, there you go. So what do you think, man? Who's telling the truth, right? Who sounds like they're telling the truth after stuff you've seen, or if you're a good reader of a person's personality or whatever, who you think is telling the truth, right? Also, there's another thing I saw, which was, you know how CBS is being sued about an interview that she did with 60 Minutes, I believe, and they clipped it to where, I'll get into it later. They clipped it to make it look better for her, which is, in a way, you know, interferes with you know, the two candidates. But anyway, yeah, there you go. I mean, thought it was interesting. You know, stuff is coming out. I would say Joe Rogan's telling the truth, just my opinion. It's kind of, in a way, easy to see, but here's another clip right here.
This is the thing, while this guy's saying like that we were difficult to deal with. Not true. We were super easy. We made it real clear. But also, it's got to be the actual real show. It shouldn't be some fake version of it where I'm sitting in a conference room. Also, they wanted a stenographer in the room. They wanted staff in the room. They wanted Trump was just in here by himself.
Yeah.
Just me, him, and Jamie. That's it. For 3 hours. Like, they wanted to do everything. They wanted it very controlled, and they were really concerned that it wasn't going to be edited. So I don't think they ever really were sure they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Then once Trump did it and it had this huge response, I think then it was like, what the fuck? What are we doing? He just did it. It's got 50 fucking million views. This is so stupid. Why didn't we do it? And so then there was, even then, when they offered to do it in D.C., my manager asked, is she committed to doing this? If I bring this to Joe, no. She hasn't committed to doing this. Have you brought this to her? Like, they wouldn't even say whether or not she had expressed willingness to do it or whether they were trying to convince her to do it. We know for sure there were some people that were supposedly on her staff that were against her doing it. They thought it was because, you know, it's a bunch of wokesters. They're basically in a cult. You have a like, if you're willing to go on Fox News, you talk to, what's that guy's name, Brett Breyer?
Yeah.
Where they cut that off after 20 minutes. When they did that, that's when I was like, look, it's got to be in the studio. It's got to be in the studio, and it's got to be real. It's got to be a real conversation. I had entertained a couple of times going to, but I was like, 45 minutes is just not enough. You know, you and I have been talking an hour and a half already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it's not enough time.
So there you go. Let me ask you this. What would be the reason, let's say Joe Rogan's telling the truth, right? And they're lying about it. They didn't want to do the podcast. Let's just say that. What would be the reason that, you know, they wouldn't want to do the podcast and make this up? You know, I think when Trump went on there, he had, like 50 million views on there. This is the biggest podcast. Like, why wouldn't you want to reach like a big audience, right? Like, what would be the reason? Is it because, you know, her party and all is telling her that she's in the lead, she's gonna win no matter what, and going on a podcast would, what's the word? Showcase or expose, you know, certain things. We've seen it. What they call it, word salad. I get it, but is that what they're afraid of? Like, what would be the reason? Or they knew that she was losing, and it would make it worse. Like, it was, they probably thought the race was close, and going on there would make it worse, right? Which is kind of the same thing I said, but making it worse. Basically, that's what it comes down to, making it worse. But just some thoughts, man. This would be a last one here. Just a finale. But drink your water, eat right. You know, get healthy, cut out the sugar. get your cardio, lose the weight, get a strong body, strong mind.
Trying to say, hey, it wasn't my fault. You know, they became difficult. No, we didn't become difficult. And the other thing was like they wanted to do it that Saturday, the day after Trump. And I said, I'll do it, but it has to be at 8:30 a.m. The reason why was I had a podcast already scheduled that was a live UFC podcast. So we do this thing called Fight Companion. So there was this title fight that was happening in, I think, was it Saudi Arabia? Or was it Dubai or Abu Dhabi? It was somewhere in the Middle East, I believe, if I remember correctly. See if you can find out what that was, just so we're clear. I have friends. I flew in 3 of my buddies from California, and we were all going to do this podcast together. Like, we had committed to doing this. Like, they were already in town. Like, I can't just say, no, guys, I can't do this awesome thing because I have to interview Kamala Harris.
No, I understand.
Seems like I should to some people, but that's because you're in the politics business. I'm an MMA commentator. This is part of my job. And I said I would do it. I said I'll do it, but it has to be like 8:30 in the morning because I have to be done by the time the fights start. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
They didn't do that either. So this idea that I sabotaged her, there's a bunch of people that say I fucked her over or whatever. That's not true. So you can think whatever you want, but it was Abu Dhabi. So that was Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. So for UFC fans, just so you know, for people listening that aren't UFC fans.
There you go, man. Just have a clear mind, use common sense, you know, intuition. I mean, some stuff is plain to see, man. So make your own judgment, man. Make the right judgment. Yeah, there you go. Peace, love, and what's the other one? Can't think of it. Peace, love, and harmony.